Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, and as you can probably tell from the title of this video, it's about how to color your hair in just 10 minutes. I'm going to be talking about Schwarzkopf's Express color line, which is called Igora Color 10, and it's one of my most used hair coloring products from Schwarzkopf because you can achieve reds, coppers, high lift blondes, and even color 100% gray in just 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. If this is your first time here, my name is Christy and I am a former hair colorist and educator for Schwarzkopf. And when I say to you that this is my favorite and most used hair coloring product from Schwarzkopf after using this brand for over 16 years, you can only imagine. So if you're asking yourself, how is it possible to achieve these results in 10 minutes when to achieve high lift blondes or cover 100% gray, it usually takes 30 to 45 minutes? I'm going to explain a little bit of the science behind it, keeping it short and sweet, but I just want you to know what's going on in the hair. This product has high-performing color pigments, and it also has amino acids, which are glycine and arginine. Together, they're going to form an express amino acid carrier. So you can imagine this penetrating into our hair, and the way it does it is that the chemical structure of that is similar to the structure of our hair. So that's going to permit these molecules to penetrate into the hair shaft and basically change the color of our hair quickly. Now it also is going to fortify and strengthen the proteins that we have in our hair. So if you think about that for a second, basically a shorter processing time in this case is also going to be a more gentle processing time on your hair. So now that we know what's going on in the hair when we're using Igora Color 10, you can also see that you're not sacrificing the quality of the product because you're saving time. You can actually have the best of both worlds when you're using this. What I always thought was so clever, based on like the first time I used this product many years ago, is that Schwarzkopf managed to use the same numbering system that it uses on all of its color lines. So if you're not new to Schwarzkopf, this is a piece of cake. Literally, you're going to basically choose the colors that you always chose to color your hair, but now you could do it in 10 minutes. But either way, I'm going to review the numbering system. So basically, the number that you're going to see on a die box is going to be a number, a dash, and maybe one or two extra numbers. The number before the dash is just how light or dark your hair is going to be if you use this product, and any numbers after the dash is just what is the color direction of the colors inside the box. If it has one number, well, then it only has one color direction. If it has two numbers, well, then it's going to have a secondary color direction. So you'll see more of the first color and a little bit less, or just some reflex of the second number. So let's review this. Any number before the dash is the levels. When I refer to levels, it's how dark or light our hair is or can be using that product. A 1 would be black, a 3 would be a dark brown, a 4 would be a medium brown, a 5 would be a light brown, a 6 would be a dark blonde, a 7 would be a medium blonde, an 8 would be a light blonde, and 9, 10, 11, those are extra light blondes. So after the dash, it's a whole different story. Those are the color directions. It's what color your hair is going to be. Not how light or dark like the number before the dash. After the dash is what color do you want it to be? What base do you want it to be? Whereas if you choose something with a 0, you want a natural color or a neutral color. If you choose something with a 1, that's our cendre, which just means it's going to have blue violet, and it'll help neutralize underlying pigments like yellow. If you see a 2, that's the ash color, which basically is blue. If you see a 3, that's the matte color. It has green as a base, and it's going to neutralize any red unwanted pigments. If you see a 4, that's a beige color, which it just has a muted gold. If you see a 5, that's just gold. If you see a 6, that's chocolate. That's just a beautiful warm brown. If you see a 7, it's copper, which is going to have copper. If you see an 8, it's red. If you see a 9, it's violet. But you may also see a situation where you have two numbers after the dash. What that means is if it's an 8, 8, it means you're going to intensify that red color. If it's a 9-9, you're going to intensify the violet color. But you may also see a situation where you have 2 zeros. And that means that you're going to have 25% more pigments in that dye tube than you would have in a one that only has 1 zero. This just means that if you have resistant gray, this is the color that you want to use, the one with 2 zeros. That just brings me to the subject of how are they classified. So the series that is going to cover 100% gray will always end in a 0 or a 00 or a 1 in color 10. Now the fashion series that's going to cover 50% of gray are those that are going to end in a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, or a 9. Those are going to cover only 50%. So that doesn't mean that you can't mix them. You can. You can choose any color from the fashion series and mix it with the 100% coverage series to cover 100% gray. It'll work. So the next thing I want to talk about is the developers, which is also very clever of Schwarzkopf. You can use the same oil developers that you use in the whole Schwarzkopf line with these hair color 10 products as well. So you don't have to buy different developers to use this. You can use the same ones. And the rules are the same. If you have volume 10, you're going to deposit. What that means is darken. If you use a volume 20, you're going to lift 1 to 1.5 levels. A volume 30, 3 levels or 3.5, and a volume 40, you may get to up to 4 levels of lift. So the rules are the same, and I'll link here a video that I did explaining how the peroxides work if you want to review that, but it's the same color theory. How are we going to formulate this? The way we're going to formulate color 10 is a 1-to-1. What that means is, for example, if you chose an 8-4 and you're going to use 20 grams of 8-4, you're also going to use 20 grams of the developer that you chose and that you need for the level of your hair, because you are also using the basic color theory. All the rules that apply when you're coloring hair with any other hair dye, it's the same for color 10. It doesn't change. But let's talk a little bit more about the gray coverage series. The way you're going to cover 100% gray is basically the same way you cover gray in the rest of the Schwarzkopf hair color lines. What you're going to do is use the natural series or the double pigment series. What you have to know is what peroxide you're going to use, like always, and if you're going to use a double 0 or just 1 0. How are you going to know this? Based on the texture of the hair. That doesn't change. I just did a video about how to cover gray hair, and I'll link it here as well. There's only one thing that's going to change, and I'm going to explain that in just a second. You're going to, like always, maintain yourself in the world of the 20 or 30 developer, and you're also going to use the natural series to cover gray and mix with any of the colors that you chose from the fashion series. But let's say you chose an 8-0 and you have a medium texture of hair, meaning that it's not too thick, not too thin, it's just right. So you could use your volume 20 developer, which is our go-to number of peroxide that we use, right? If we have gray hair and normal texture, and you're gonna let it process. But let's say that your hair is very resistant to gray and you're gonna have to use the 00 series. Well, you'll probably use the volume 30 peroxide for that, because since you have 25% more color in that tube of dye, you don't want the hair to look too flat or like too dark, because there are too many pigments in the hair oxidizing with the peroxide and it may look too dark. So you want to use the volume 30 peroxide. There's an exception. If you have 90% gray or 100% gray, you probably want to use volume 20 peroxide, being that there is no color in that hair and you totally need to deposit the color. So you want to use the 20 peroxide if you have 100% of gray, independently if you're using the 00 series or just the regular 0. So where it changes a bit is when you're mixing it with the fashion series. Remember, this fashion series is going to cover up to 50% gray. So you're going to use this 1-to-2. What I mean by that is not that you're going to put more peroxide, is that you're going to use, for example, if you chose that same 8-4, that's a fashion series, and you know you're going to mix it with an 8-0, you're going to use 1 part of the 8-0, so let's say 10 grams of 8-0, and you'll use 2 parts of 8-4, which is 20 grams of 8-4. Together that adds up to 30 grams of hair dye. And you're also going to use 30 grams of the volume 20 developer. And you can also mix it, the double zeros with the fashion series. You can do it and you'd follow that same rule. So now this brings me to the high lift blondes. The high lift blondes are the ones that you're going to see that have an 11 before the dash, and it has different directions of color. Something to note about them is that they don't cover gray, but you can achieve up to 3 levels of lift if you use a volume 30. You can achieve up to 4 levels of lift if you use a volume 40. So now this brings me to the processing times, which this is what Color 10 is all about, right? Processing in 10 minutes. And generally speaking, for the whole Igora Color 10 line, you're going to process for 10 minutes to cover gray and to use fashion shades and to even achieve high lift blondes. That is true. There are certain exceptions. Before I get to those exceptions, let's just think about, so we don't confuse later on, how we're going to choose the processing time. Usually with any other hair dye and any other line that even Schwarzkopf has, your processing time depends on what percentage of developer you chose. So if you chose a 10 or a 20 developer, you're going to process 30 minutes, or 40% developer, you're going to process 45 minutes. If you have gray hair, you process for 45 minutes. When you're using Color 10, you have to forget that you ever learned that. Basically, it's only going to be 10 minutes. What are the exceptions? The exceptions to that rule is going to be if you're using the 00 series on resistant gray hair, you can process up to 15 minutes. And you can also apply some heat to the hair for 5 minutes, and then the remaining 10 minutes, you don't apply the heat to the hair. You kind of let it cool off and seal, but you don't wash it out until 10 minutes later. That's a total of 15 minutes processing time. The high lift shades, you can also process them for those extra 5 minutes to achieve that blonder result. So something that's very particular and important about Color 10 is that if you leave it on for longer than 10 minutes processing, the color can get too dark. That's how come I said leave it on 5 extra minutes if you have resistant gray or you want to go lighter. Leave it on those extra 5 minutes because it's a high lift product and it'll make you lighter in those extra 5 minutes. But for the rest of the line, if you leave it processed for more than 10 minutes, your hair will darken, maybe more than you expected, and you won't have those predictable results. So that brings me to the application methods. When you're applying Color 10, you have to work rather quickly. It's not impossible. I do it all the time, and I've been doing it for years. Basically, you're going to section, like always, your hair into quadrants, and you're going to start applying, if you have gray hair, where you have the gray hair. In my case, I always start applying the product in the front, sectioning, and applying it to the regrowth, finish in the back, and counting that time when I finish the application to the last piece of hair in that last section. Now, just keep in mind, you have 10 minutes to apply it, 10 minutes to process it. And I've done it frequently. It can be done. Now, where are you going to see this product really shine? Let's look at it this way. If you work in a salon, or if you have a salon, you can really maximize the amount of people that you see in a day and apply color to in a day, because if you think about it, you can color their hair in 10 minutes, process it for 10 minutes, wash it out, and if you don't style it, in basically like 35 minutes, 40 minutes, you're done. If you're going to style it in an hour and a half, you're done. So if you're one of those people that are in a hurry and you're going to do this to yourself and you don't want to spend too much time doing this, if you actually have to color your hair every 2 weeks because the gray grows in and every 2 weeks you already have that regrowth, you can basically just apply this like an express service, just where you see the gray, where it usually shows up first where we part our hair on the temples. You can apply it there and it'll kind of buy you some time until your next appointment or the next time you color the whole head. So you can apply it to the regrowth. You can apply this from roots to ends, but you have to work really quickly. So if you have a person or on yourself, and if you have too much hair to work with or it's too long, you may have to do this in 2 sections, like first work the front, when you finish it, wash it out, and then work the back. You can do that as well, it's fine. I mean, but for the time you're gonna spend on it, you may wanna use the regular Igora Royal series, where you just process for 30-45 minutes, and it'll be fine because the colors are the same, they don't vary. But I will say this, in my experience, the gray coverage that I get from Color 10 exceeds my expectations, because it covers, for me, it covers gray better than the regular Igora Royal. It just works so good. It gives me those predictable results, and it's never like a guessing game. Like, how is it gonna cover this gray? It always does a great job. Now, so another thing I really like about Color 10, and it's actually the way the line is targeted towards men. Because first of all, they can be in and out of the hair salon in 20 minutes. And if you use the 7-12, think about it, it's part of the fashion series, so it's basically going to cover 50% of gray, and they'll be able to achieve this like salt and pepper effect on the hair where it looks very natural, especially on men, and they could just get it done quickly. So it's perfect for men. And I also like to use it for a shadow root, because if you think about it, you could get it done quickly in 10 minutes. And if you take the shades 912 and 712 and you mix them together, you'll get an 812, and that's a real pretty color for a shadow root. So one more thing I want to mention before I finalize this video is that Schwarzkopf has it's Igora Royal, which those are the ones that the processing time is the normal 30-45 minutes. It has its Vibrance, which is the demi-permanent line. And even though they all use the same numbering system, and usually you can find the same color in Igora Royal that you'll see in Igora Color 10, and you'll see it in Vibrance. Even though they have the same colors, and the Igora Royal and Igora 10 Color 10 basically use the same peroxides, you can't intermix these different coloring products. Color 10 can be intermixed amongst all the colors of Color 10. Igora Royal, you can mix all those together, and the Vibrance, you mix those together. But what you cannot do is mix Igora Color 10 with Igora Royal. You won't get predictable results if you do that, and I don't know exactly how it would work because the processing times are way different, right? So with that, that brings this video to an end. And if you have any questions or comments or a particular situation about your hair situation, just leave me a comment or a question in the section below. And until the next time, bye.